Next big thing I hear a lot about pilots is obviously there's a lot of rules about your health and making sure you have to be healthy enough to fly and everything. So disability insurance. Yeah. I know it's important to me, but I guess why is it important?
Yeah.
I hear that it's important, but why is it different for an airline pilot versus anyone else?
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And there's a lot of things that come to my mind when we talk about disability, and one of the first things is what you just said. Why is it different for pilots? Well, it's different for pilots because we're held to a standard in the eyes of the FAA, such that if you find a heart murmur or something, or if there's one found on your annual flight physical, you could be done in an instant and not even know it. I mean, you're physically healthy, you feel fine. Next thing you know, you got a heart problem, you're out.
No more flying.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a very specific vulnerability that we have. Most of our airline pilots and their families are going to be successful. They're going to build wealth. The thing then that we try to layer on in the plan, the retirement plan, is to make sure that wealth is protected.
Yeah,
and this is a vulnerability that we all have that could destroy that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one of the reasons is that we're especially vulnerable to that.
Awesome. So the regulations obviously make us vulnerable. There's a lot of rules that are in place we can fall victim to. So that's good to know. Now, next thing is if I'm trying to choose my disability insurance, how much? Where do I start with that? Yeah. I guess how much should I choose?
Exactly.
I'm a young guy. Where do I go?
Yeah. I would. The initial answer is as much as you can. In fact, I think in the realm of disability insurance, get as much as you can.
Okay.
Now that's not always easy as a new pilot, brand new FO, because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And your income is not that high anyway.
Yeah.
At that point, so as a new FO, you have less to insure, and you have less to spend on all this extra insurance.
Yes.
So there may be a good argument as a new pilot in the airline business that you don't have to have the maximum amounts. But as your income grows, as your family grows, as your lifestyle spending grows, then that insurance needs to come up with it.
Okay.
So look to that.
To prioritize it a little higher in my expenses.
Absolutely.
As I kind of move along, obviously, as my family grows and everything
as your
like
income
that.
goes up. One of the things, Ben, that goes into disability insurance is financial planning. And what I mean by that is you've got to look at your lifestyle expenses and costs. In other words, if I'm spending $20,000 a month in my lifestyle after taxes, well, if I become disabled, I got some problems, Ben, because I'm not going to have $20,000 a month anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to take an immediate pay cut. So that's what I mean by planning. And a lot of our, all of us pilots know at least a few people that have either been out on disability or they could go out on disability anytime. They've got a heart problem. One of my friends flies with a pacemaker. Every time he goes and passes his FAA physical, he jumps for joy. I get to work another year.
Yeah.
But what those people do differently than healthy people, let's say, is that they know and understand that at any moment they've got to live off of $12,500 a month, period. So they're planning. So everything they do, they keep their costs low, they pay their debts off, they understand that at any moment their income could go from $20,000 to $12,500 a month.
Wow!
So you got to be ready for that. In your life, it could be quite a shock. So we all have to be ready for that. I'm not saying it'll immediately go to $12,500. It's actually a percentage of your income. And then we have other programs, Ben, that could actually for a couple of years you could actually make the same amount that you made pre-disability.
Wow!
We won't get into those details here, but that's possible, but not for long. It can't go on. In fact, the laws won't allow that to go on for more than 5 years or so.
Well, you're saying that my pay would get cut pretty quickly. I guess that is a question I would have is what is my timeline? If I did get disabled, what happens to my pay?
Yep.
When does it? Where does it go?
That's
when does
a great
my disability
question.
kick in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in this forum, we're addressing a lot of different airlines. And, we've looked at this timeline at UPS, at Delta, at American, and Southwest. So all of them are a tad bit different on how, just some minor things that are different. So you got to know this timeline, first of all. And we can't tell everybody's timeline right now. But basically what's going to happen, Ben, is you're going to, let's say you get injured. You're going to have an elimination period of at least 30 days where you got nothing except sick pay and your emergency savings, your emergency fund. Because most disabilities won't pay anything for at least 30 days, short-term disability.
Wow, okay.
Mm-hmm. So then short-term disability will probably kick in after 30 days. For some people, depending on your election, you might have to exhaust all your sick time, and then short-term disability kick in. Wow. So it's another variation there that you need to know. Once short-term disability is over, usually that's about 6 months, and sometimes you can even dovetail your sick time with your short-term disability.
Okay.
But once that's over, then loss of license will kick in, and long-term disability will kick in, usually at the 6th month or thereabout point.
Okay.
Those two benefits will dovetail, and those two will be capped. In other words, your long-term disability benefit then could be, depending on your income, it could be as high as $12,500. But if your loss of license is paying $11,000, then you're capped. Those two together will be capped. Your loss of license will pay out, and then you'll only get about $1,000 to $1,500 for a while of long-term disability. Okay? Then after a while, your loss of license goes away, and then your long-term disability takes over and takes you out. Again, if you were permanently disabled, that would take you through age 65.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of moving parts there, Ben. Each person has different variations, and each person at each airline has different variations. So you got to know that stuff.
Yeah. Well, waking up one day and finding myself disabled, not being able to fly, and that's a real fear. So, tax implications. Another thing. Quick point. What happens with your taxes?
Yeah.
Are you covered? What is that like?
Yeah. Most of the disability insurances are tax-free.
Okay.
Short-term disability, long-term disability, tax-free. There is one that you might have to make a decision on depending on your airline. For example, Southwest Airlines, you have an option. You can choose to have a tax-free loss of license benefit or a taxable loss of license benefit. And it's worth talking about just for a second because I know it applies to a lot of people. What you have to do, Ben, the airline pays that loss of license insurance premium. They pay it for you. But they give you the choice to say, hey, if you want to pay the taxes on the premium right now, then your loss of license insurance benefit will be tax-free.
Okay.
So you have the choice. Now, here's what I think. Take it for whatever it's worth. Because a lot of people get a little, sensitive about taxes. I'm not paying taxes if I don't have to. I get that. But the way I see it, Ben, is I'm going to go ahead and pay the taxes on that premium that's paid for me. And it varies depending on your income, but let's say it's about $130 a month, I think is about what it could be, plus or minus $50 or whatever. So if you can pay that taxes, to me that's like buying extra insurance. And again, as a pilot, I'm especially vulnerable to disabilities, and I want more insurance. Even if it means I got to pay that a little ahead of time. Now, that's just my opinion. Some people may choose not to do that. That's fine. If you're a younger pilot, you may choose not to do that, and then maybe turn it on a little later.
Okay.
As you need more insurance.
So I should definitely consider the taxes.
Absolutely,
very, very interesting. So obviously talked about it a little bit before, how sick time can definitely affect how much disability and how long I'll be on short term to long term, and how that can work. You can accumulate some sick time, but how does that work? Should I accumulate it? What should I be using my sick time for? Absolutely.
Again, here's where each airline's a little different. Southwest, you can accumulate your sick time until you retire, and then what you don't have, you lose it.
Okay.
Sometimes that's good, not so good. Delta, you can accumulate it by the year, I believe.
Okay.
So you got to be mindful of your specific company rules. But sick time is good to have in disability situation because it kind of acts like your emergency fund, if you will.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, having as much sick time as you can is very beneficial. It also depends, Ben, on things like, for example, there's a rule at Southwest where if I have a younger non-working spouse, let's say my wife is 5 years younger than me, and she's non-working, and I hit 65, well, then I go to Medicare. I go to Medicare insurance now.
Right.
And we're kind of talking about healthcare insurance right now,
right?
And I'll show you how this relates to your sick time. But now my wife potentially doesn't have healthcare insurance anymore. I'm on Medicare. She's got nothing. She's 65. So if I have 120 trips per year, then my wife can be on Southwest Airlines health insurance.
Wow.
So she has health insurance if I've got enough sick time. So that's something to think about for all the pilots out there. Maybe you have a younger spouse, etc. So another benefit to have, a reasonable amount of sick pay or sick time. I'm not going to give an exact number because everybody's situation is so different.
Yeah.
But it really is a benefit you should, hang on to some, kind of like an emergency fund.
Yeah. Well, I guess last real thing that just to kind of wrap it up would be, as obviously pilots are hustlers, they have a lot of side gigs and everything like that. So if I was disabled, maybe my first thought would be, well, I'll find another job where I could work.
Yep.
How does that affect my disability?
Oh, that's a great question. This is where disability insurance gets a little complicated because you have own occupation types of insurance versus any occupation. So you need to look into this depending on your airline. For example, there is a possibility that, let's say you were disabled as an airline pilot, and then you went out and you became an attorney, and you started making more money than you did as an airline pilot. Or, and again, in Southwest Airlines example, if you make 80% after your disability, 80% of your pre-disability income, your disability insurance could be pared back.
Okay.
Could be pared back.
Okay.
Completely. Now that's very unusual because airline pilots are very high income. It's hard to go out, get another job making the same amount of money.
Yeah.
It's pretty unusual, but it's something to think about. The other side of that, Ben, is is me, for example. I have another full-time job essentially, and if your pre-disability income exceeds a certain level, then they're going to count that against you if you become disabled in the airline. They're going to, in certain situations anyway. That could reduce my disability because they're like, hey, you have this other income. You've had it all along. Yeah. In other words, you're going to take your entire pre-disability income and something to think about. Those people are few and far between, but those are things to think about too.
Okay. Well, very good to know. We want to let everyone know as well. If you are worried about your disability, it's such an important thing to know as a pilot. Come to us. We'd love to talk about it with you. We'd love to go through your timeline. What if you did become disabled, where you're at now, and how that process would play out for you. It's very important to know, and we think it could be very beneficial. So contact Charlie. Let him know that you're looking to go through the timeline and figure out what your disability plan is. We'd love to help you with that. It's extremely important for pilots.
Right. So, that's right, Ben.
Thanks again for this. We'll see you next time on some more pilot benefits.
Thank you.